Your Honor, counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. First off, let me thank you so much for being here today. The United States of America has one compelled service left. We don't have a draft, we have jury duty. But that should show you just how important jury duty is. Our system does not work without your time and your attention, and we thank you very much for your time and attention over the next few days. The goal in an opening statement is to give you a roadmap on what I think the evidence will show to you. You are here today because the state has charged Mr. Jakubowski with 3 crimes. The first one is burglary while arming himself, the second is theft of a firearm, and the third is possession of burglary tools, bringing something to commit the burglary. And as I said, this is my opportunity to give you a roadmap on what I believe the evidence will show to you. I believe the evidence will show you that on April 4th of 2017, at Armageddon Supplies in the town of Janesville, here in Rock County, at about 8:30ish, the defendant went to the location with a hammer and a bag. The defendant went to the building, walked around the building, came to the front door. And he used that hammer and started to pound upon the mylar reinforced window, causing it to break. Now, he then reached inside the window and tried to undo the lock. The problem is that he needed a key. He then tried to kick the door, and then when that didn't work, he took a dive roll through the window, landing on some glass, cutting his hand, flipping the hammer, and going immediately to some long guns that were chained to the wall, or with locks, locked to the wall. He reached up and grabbed an automatic weapon, a machine gun, yanked it off the wall, put it in the bag that he carried. He grabbed other semi-automatic long guns and put them in the bag. He then went into a cabinet full of handguns, reached in, grabbed them, and dumped them into the bag. 2 of those had suppressors on them, silencers. He grabbed so many that they tumbled out of the bag. 18 in all is what he made away with. But that wasn't all. He reached up and grabbed a whole bunch of ammunition, shoved it in his bag. He touched a chair that was in there with that bloody hand, walked up to the wall and started grabbing magazines off the wall. Took them back, put them in his bag. And he went back a couple times and then went to another wall where there were more magazines. This whole incident took a little less than 4 minutes. He picked up the bag, it was heavy for him, went out the door, kind of got it on his shoulder, went to the back room. And in the back room, he attempted to go out the door again, learning again he needed a key to get out that door, flipped on a light, leaving some more blood, then pushed the garage door and was able to go out the garage door and out, get in his car, and drive away. Now, Detective Bentley will appear and will testify that he arrived moments after the defendant left from that gunshot. And the defendant drove away into a secluded area and lit his vehicle on fire, leaving on foot with that bag of guns. Detective Bentley saw the front door, saw the broken glass, looked inside and was able to see that it was all messed up. Obviously, guns had been torn from their locks on the walls. Detective Bentley was present when Scott Cool, the owner of the gun shop, came in and was able to take an inventory and find that there were 18 firearms missing, 18 firearms that had been stolen, including that machine gun, including the 2 handguns with the silencers, including other long guns and the ammunition and the different magazines. But he also was able to say that there was video. The store had video. And Detective Bentley will testify, and you will be able to see from that video the defendant with a hammer in his hand and a bag in his arm walk around the building, come up to that front door, and start plugging away at that door, wailing at that door until that glass broke. You'll see it from the outside, you'll see it from the inside. You'll see him try to kick that door, you'll see him reach in, and you'll see him do the dive roll through the window. You'll see from a couple different camera angles what he did when he came in the door, and immediately went and started tearing guns from the wall, putting them in his bag. You'll see from the video as he's grabbing ammunition and dumping it in the bag. You'll see what I said about the guns, how there were so many that they were falling out of his bag. You'll also see as he dive rolls into the window that he flips the hammer, and the hammer was sitting on the floor. The evidence will show to you that he got up and was yanking everything, putting it in the bag. The evidence will show, the video will show, him leaving the building. Now you'll also hear testimony that after some investigation, the blood that was on the stool was collected and sent up to the crime laboratory. And the crime laboratory got an investigative hit, a CODIS hit. You'll hear what that means when the DNA expert testifies. And that he became an investigative lead, meaning Mr. Jakubowski. That they matched the DNA to Mr. Jakubowski. So Detective Bentley, with this new information, went to his home. And he found a letter in that home, which was an apology letter written by the defendant prior to his committing the burglary. An apology letter to the owner of the gun shop, in which he was admitting what he was going to do, and admitting that he was taking guns from the shop. Now, about 10 days after the event, on the 14th, I guess 10 days to the day, on the 14th of April of 2017, the defendant was found in Richland County by a farmer and was taken into custody with 6 of the handguns that were taken from Armageddon. Detective Bentley was present when the defendant agreed to give a statement. And in that statement, the defendant admitted that he was the person who took the guns from Armageddon. He admitted that he had gone to Armageddon 2 times prior, so he was aware of exactly the layout of the shop, and that he thought it would be an easy place to burglarize. He admitted that he took the weapons, put them in the bag, and that he walked away from the situation, disposing of some of the guns that he couldn't carry. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll hear from a DNA expert that the Rock County Sheriff's Office did a buccal swab of the defendant at that time. And what a buccal swab is it's a DNA comparison tool. It's like a Q-tip on a long piece of wood, long Q-tip, which you put inside your mouth, circle it so that you can get some skin cells and some saliva. It's a really good way to be able to match DNA. The buccal swab of the defendant was sent up to the crime laboratory. And instead of an investigative lead, the buccal swab showed that the blood inside the store was the defendant's blood. You will hear testimony that there was DNA of the defendant inside the store. You will hear testimony that the defendant admitted that he took the weapons, not only to officers, but in a sworn statement in a court. He admitted that he took the guns. He admitted that he broke in the door. He admitted that he took the guns. He admitted that he took ammunition and that he took magazines. And in another statement to the court, he again admitted that he did all those things. So you will hear the defendant's DNA was inside the store that was burglarized. You'll hear that the defendant was not given permission to take those guns or to break in the store. You'll hear, and actually more, see the defendant actually committing the burglary on video. And you'll hear that the defendant himself admitted it, not once, not twice, but multiple times. After you hear all of this evidence, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm sure that you will be able to find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt on all 3 counts. Thank you very much.
Mr. Murphy, you wish to make a statement at this time or reserve it?
Briefly, Your Honor, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm not going to spend a lot of time up here arguing about, frankly, what I think the evidence will show and will not show. Mr. Sullivan has laid out the state's version of events and the facts in this case as he sees them, and I don't see need to take any more of your time to go through that. I do want to thank you, though, on behalf of Mr. Jakubowski. Mr. Sullivan's right. This is a constitutional requirement that we all have to face at some point in our lives. It's not easy. It's difficult being away from your family, your employment, and your homes, and so we do thank you for that. I'm not aware of any truth-telling device that's been patented that can be used in a situation like this that would make your role no longer necessary. So frankly, you are indispensable in this role. Now, what I do want to discuss is, in voir dire, we heard a lot about the media in this case. We heard a lot about the Janesville Gazette, news stories, interviews with Mr. Jakubowski. And despite the media obsession with Mr. Jakubowski, and I think the evidence will show that this was not, or the conduct that Mr. Jakubowski was engaged in was not an earth-shattering event. And further, despite the employment of maybe as many as 170 state, local, and federal law enforcement officers that were charged in the duty of chasing down and apprehending Mr. Jakubowski, the evidence will show this is not the crime of the century. and despite the cancellation of church services, school events, and social events, and the cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars, what this boils down to is the run-of-the-mill business burglary and theft. I'm confident that you've all heard the story that Mr. Sullivan outlined here today. My guess is that Mr. Jakubowski will testify today or tomorrow, and he will not deny the conduct or engaging in the conduct that resulted in the charges that he now faces. But that being said, Mr. Jakubowski has demanded a jury trial. And because he's demanded a jury trial, which is his absolute right under the state and federal constitution, he has required the state of Wisconsin to prove each and every element of each and every offense to each and every one of you by evidence that convinces you beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Jakubowski is guilty of these 3 offenses. Also, by demanding a jury trial, Mr. Jakubowski has put his faith in 12 citizens of Rock County, the county where he grew up, was born and raised, and he's put his faith that you will carefully review each item of evidence, that you'll intently listen to the testimony of each witness, and that you'll fairly deliberate in this matter, and you'll reach a fair verdict, a just and fair verdict that Mr. Jakubowski's supporters, his detractors, and in fact Mr. Jakubowski will all agree is fair. In the final analysis, if we cannot just get fundamental fairness in this justice system, we might as well all go off the grid and follow the same route Mr. Jakubowski took. The court, following the submission of evidence in this matter, will instruct you, and you are required by an oath to follow the court's instructions. The court will tell you that in each count, if you can reconcile the evidence upon a reasonable hypothesis that results in Mr. Jakubowski's innocence, you are to do so and find Mr. Jakubowski not guilty. I'm convinced that you'll follow that duty and you'll do what's right. Thank you.